is there a like for example due process in place in your platform?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. Mr. Chair, if I may. Madam Congresswoman, again, I'm not familiar with the specifics of your case, but I, again, can talk in general. Users should receive notifications if actions have been taken against their account. That is certainly part of the due process that we have in place, and users have a right of appeal. And in fact, when we see mistakes happen and users appeal those actions, the content in question, if it was a community standards violation, may often be restored. In some cases, the account would be restored. I do just want to highlight, in the specific case of hostile takeover of accounts, or what Meta believes may be a hostile takeover of an account, that can be a more complex process for very good reason. We want to make sure that we are not providing access to the account of someone who shouldn't have it. And so, Madam Congresswoman, I would just emphasize again that if you or another member of Congress is having any types of these issues, we can certainly provide you access to our Meta Support Pro and other channels so that we can solve these problems together.
Mr. Chair, may I ask also that, are you familiar with troll armies? Troll armies, or mass reporting of an account so that it could be taken down for any other reasons? Are you familiar with that? Because I'm suspecting that my personal account was a victim of that scheme by army trolls, or by a group who would like to take down my account. Because as I can see here in your process of checking the misinformation and disinformation, it would be if it is mass reported, it goes to your AI, and then after that, human checking, right? In your graph of how to determine the disinformation or violation of your community standards. So my question is, are you familiar with that scheme?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Madam Congresswoman, coordinated mass reporting absolutely violates our policies. We have seen that type of behavior before and certainly if we detect that type of behavior, then we would seek to make sure that any decisions that are made about accounts are the correct ones. And then we would also try to go after the people who are engaged in the coordinated mass reporting, because that clearly does violate our policies. And that's the type of abusive network that we would seek to prohibit from utilizing our platforms.
Another question, Mr. Chair, is about the inaction of the Meta on the AI-generated images abused. I was also a victim of that when I hold a gun. They are using the AI-generated, but still in the platform. But the Meta is not doing anything about that, and many progressive organizations and individuals are victims of that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, sorry. So the question.
So how do you detect, or why are you not taking down AI-generated images that you think are not or inappropriate or not true or misinformation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Madam Congresswoman, and for the committee, I think I would start from the place of our view of misinformation is that whether or not it's AI generated or not, it would be misinformation. Right? And so I think first and foremost, what I would say and emphasize is that our misinformation policies apply to content that is AI generated and is not AI generated. Now, taking a larger look at AI-generated content. Okay. There's a few different pieces to this, right? First and foremost, if people use meta AI in our own products to generate, for generative AI imagery or the like, we have the ability to detect that, right? And it'll come with a watermark, basically, and therefore a label and be recognizable as a generated AI image. Now, if people are using other tools, right, then basically it's harder to detect what is generative AI and what is not. This is an area of very significant investment for Meta right now. We're working very hard on ways to detect what is generative AI and what is not. I think that part of the issue that we have here, and this is one where what we need is collective action. At the moment, there's no agreed upon industry standard for watermarking or for how platforms like ours should go about detecting the difference between generative AI and non-generative AI content. And so that's an area where we really need more focused industry collaboration, and certainly we are trying to drive that. For Meta, we believe it's very important for that type of collaboration to happen between industry, civil society, and governments. And I think the last thing I would really talk about when it comes to generative AI imagery or other content is really distinguishing between paid content and non-paid content. Right? If you are, just generally speaking, at Meta, we take a much more stringent approach to moderating paid content, right? Because obviously we're taking money for it. We believe we have responsibility that's even greater, and the distribution would be increased, right? And so, in the context of anything that is, again, taking out the generative AI component of it, any type of content that is paid for, that is political in nature, that talks about a campaign or a politician or a social issue, right, is subject to our policies on political candidates and social issue paid advertising, right? And according to those policies, you would be required to disclose who is paying for the ad and sponsoring the content. You would also have to go through an authorization process, which would include, in most cases, providing a government ID.
Okay,
and you would have to be,
on that. So
if I could just finish one last point, you'd have to be located in Philippines, right? If you want to run a social issue or political ad, you'd have to be located in Philippines, right? And so there's a series of steps that you have to take to cross that threshold in order to be able to run those types of ads. And then in addition to it, if it is AI generated, you'd be required to disclose that it is an AI generated paid piece of content.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So really, it's very hard to determine because the name of the account is alias, or the name of account is just like a like, for example, Makabayan. The account is using our political organization. That account names Makabayan, is using our political organization, but it has this what I saw an AI generated images of mine with guns, with the rebels, etc. I will give you the images later so that you can see. Okay.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Madam Congresswoman, and I know my colleague also wants to add on to this.
Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, Madam Congresswoman, it's my understanding that you reported this content, this image, to Comelec, and we have removed it. I would like to also state respectfully for the record that we're not doing nothing on harmful generative AI. In fact, as recently as it was either yesterday or the day before, I personally worked directly with PAOK to remove a harmful piece of generative AI that was promoting investment scams. And what happens when something like that gets reported, it's not just that piece of content that comes down. That informs our ability to enforce across the platforms and across other accounts. So although PAOK reported one specific URL, many, many others came down as a result of that report. So while I understand, with respect, how painful and frustrating it must be to be a victim of harmful generative AI, please don't think we're doing nothing. But we are not perfect yet, but we always strive to be better. We strive to be better by signal sharing and trend sharing with Filipino law enforcement, legislative, NGOs, civil society, etc. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would just emphasize what Rob said about, please, if you believe that there's a piece of content that violates our policies, please do report it through COMELEC, and we'll treat it with the utmost urgency. Thank you.
And, Mr. Chair, last question. And in your presentation, you have also employed organization or fact-checker organization. Can you name those? Do you have an example? The Vera files. You have. What is AFP?
Correct.
What is AFP?
That's a
Mr. Chair, if I may. Agence France Presse.
Okay.
It's a global news organization.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Before we proceed, may I inform everyone that this will be a working lunch, so please feel free to have your lunch while the hearing is ongoing. Before we proceed with the next interpolator, may I acknowledge the presence of Deputy Speaker J.J. Suarez, Honorable Jefferson Conghon, Honorable Julien Baronda, and present online, Honorable Janet Garin, Honorable Isabel Maria Zamora, Honorable Ramon Rodrigo Gutierrez, Honorable Joe Sobiri, Honorable Drixie Cardema. Next interpolator will be Honorable Salvador Plato.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. To our dear colleagues and our esteemed guests. I just want to ask a question to Mr. Abrams. What Mitas stands on government requests for user data? For instance, for example, there is a law enforcement investigation against a blogger suspected of peddling malicious content on social media, and his data and posts are needed for the investigation. Will Meta provide those requested data? What is your policy or misinformation and disinformation? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, with permission, I'll do my best to address the concern.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If you'd like a very complete, thorough, total list, I'm happy to provide that for you in writing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my next question is, do you have a, for example, a study of which is the most who have a content of disinformation and fake news? Which of these the websites or applications have the most? Is it Facebook?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Yes, thank you. Congresswoman, that's a very tough question to answer. Again, I'll just go back to the kind of place where I started with, which is how do you determine what's misinformation, right? That is not an easy question to answer, but what I would say is
we can quantify it as what's reported, right?
Yeah. So if
is
you
it Facebook? Can you give us?
Yeah. So if you look at the fact checks that are reported, and now, but I just want to be clear. Just speaking of Philippines, right? I believe, and I can check this to make sure that it's accurate after the hearing, but I believe that the most fact checks we see in Philippines are on Facebook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my question is, how do you ensure that there are no disinformation or fake news that are being disseminated in, for example, in the Facebook platform? Previously, my colleague said that she reported the fake news the AI generated content. Do you have a mechanism of removing a content if it's a disinformation or fake news motu proprio? For example, if it's not reported and it's being generated, so those are two different things, right? One is reported and one is not reported. If there's no report of that, but it's an AI generated and it's a disinformation or fake news kind of news.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Congresswoman. The fact checkers that we work with, the third-party fact checkers, have the ability to, and they do very often, fact check content even if we have not reported it to us. So the answer is yes. And I would say, I just reiterate, from earlier in my presentation, that whether a piece of content is AI generated or not, we would still treat it the same as misinformation.
So there's a form to, if there's no report, you can actually flag it as a disinformation or fake news, right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Yes, so let me talk about all the different ways that this can be done, right? First of all, as your colleague showed earlier, a user that's scrolling through Facebook can report something if they believe it's false information, and that would flag it for our systems so that we would have a look at that and potentially pass it on to a third-party fact checker. Also, we ourselves have the ability to look at content that we see going viral, and if we have reason to believe that that would be a potentially harmful piece of misinformation, we can send it to the third-party fact checkers. And also, the third-party fact checkers can and very much do fact check misinformation on their own without any prompt from us or anyone else.
Yes,
and I would just like, sorry, and I would also just stress that the government also has its own reporting channels to us. So if we get a report of misinformation from COMELEC or DICT or other agencies that are onboarded to our channels, we will also review that and pass it to the third-party fact checkers.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have here an example of the fact check, example of the fact check image. This is from Digsan. If you think this is normal, then you are abnormal. Hashtag Quadcom, hashtag Duterte, hashtag NPA, hashtag HOR, hashtag Philippines. And there's an image of the three of us. It is alarming to see our leaders being questioned by NPA affiliates. The House of Representatives tolerates this, and it is very disturbing. So, Mr. Chair, it was fact-checked by Rappler. And the claim was, it's false, no? So, this is an example of how the Meta does it, right? I don't know how you fact check, for example, how you take down, or what is your standards on taking down the AI that is not being fact checked by this by Verifiles, by Rappler, by those that you've actually mentioned before.
Mr. Chairman, Congresswoman, in the presentation I gave, I highlighted that we have a three-pronged approach to misinformation. We remove the most harmful misinformation if we believe that it can lead to, and independently confirm that it can lead to offline harm and violence in the real world. We will also do that in the case that it violates certain types of elections law. With misinformation that does not meet that threshold, we will use our third-party fact checkers to check if indeed that misinformation is false or partially false or missing context or any of those kind of labels. And if the third party fact checker does confirm that it's false, then we will just reduce the distribution of that content on our platforms, and we will put a label on it so that someone who sees that content understands that they are looking at content that has been determined by a third-party fact checker to be at least false or partially false, or as I said, there's a number of other labels they can apply. I showed an example earlier about what that would look like on our platforms. And so when it comes to AI, I think the important thing to reiterate is, number one, that whether a piece of content is AI generated or not, the misinformation policies still apply. Right? They apply across the board. So if there is a piece of misinformation that's generated by AI, it's still going to be the same misinformation policies. Now, there is one additional point to make, which I mentioned previously, which is that if it's a paid piece of content, if it's sponsored, if it's an ad, then there are additional checks that we do, and we require that whoever has placed that ad or boosted that content disclose that it is AI generated, right? And then you'll also be able to go into the ad library and see the details, and these are all publicly available, of who placed the ad, how much was spent on it, and so forth. And if these ads are politically, if they're political in nature, if they are about the election, about a campaign, about a political candidate, if they're about social issues, then they have to go through our authorization process for running political and social ads. That adds another layer of authorization and verification, so that means that,
my question is, how do you control this? You have the controls, you have the technology. How do you control this kind of I am asking this, Mr. Chair, because we are always the victims of red tagging, and it is a danger to our life, liberty, and property. And we all know that those are actually false contents. But it keeps on proliferating in the internet. Even right now, as we are speaking. So I'm asking the Meta, how do they do that? Is there, actually my next question is about how many disinformation have you had banned or removed, or how do you control this fake news or disinformation? How many are based on complaints? How many are initiated by your platforms, for example? Those are questions that I would like to be, answered.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, Congresswoman, I think the issue of red tagging is one that we take very, very seriously, and I would express my sympathy to anyone who's been the victim of that. That's obviously a very, very, very difficult experience, and one that I would certainly not wish on anyone. I would just like to emphasize that red tagging violates our policies. We view red tagging as a form of coordinating harm on our platform, and that is prohibited. When we're made aware of it, and we confirm that it's red tagging, then we will remove that content. We've done that in many, many cases for a number of years now. And I would just emphasize again that does violate our policies, and we will remove it when it's reported to us. So I would encourage you or any other victim of red tagging to send a report to us via COMELEC, via DICT, or the other channels that we have with the government, and we would review that with the utmost urgency, given the potential for harm. Your second question was about fact-checking, I believe, right? And I would just say that when it comes to fact-checking, there's a publicly available library, and we can share that with the committee, of the different types of fact checks that have been placed on our platform. Just just recently, I think, we've seen a number of different issues that have been covered by our fact checkers in Philippines, and again, I think those are all publicly available, and be happy to share a list with the committee, but anyone can find that also, as they're all online.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, in terms of red tagging, you act through complaints. For example, you mentioned the ICT, you mentioned COMELEC. So if there's no complaint, you don't act on it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Congresswoman, we would act on it if we were, in any case that we're aware of it. If a member of our internal teams finds it, they would act on it even without a report. So I do just want to make that clear. I think that we do very much benefit from the reports we get. I mean, it is hard. I think one of the things that we know about red tagging is that, and I kind of mentioned this before, there are different types of content. When we look at violations of our community standards, there's a type of content that very clearly violates, it's not even close, it's a clear violation of our community standards. The really obvious examples are child exploitative imagery, terrorism, graphic violence. I mean, it is much easier to moderate that kind of content. When we get down to the level of speech, and red tagging is one of these issues, it sometimes can be nuanced, right? Now, it doesn't mean we don't take it seriously. We take it very seriously, right?
You have guidelines on that.
We do absolutely have guidelines on that. We absolutely have guidelines on red tagging.
Red tagging per se.
Sorry?
Red tagging. Do you have guidelines for that?
Yes, we have guidelines on red tagging. Rob, do you want to add anything on this point?
Just say in general, red tagging often involves doxing, which puts people at risk. So that would be a red line, for example. But I think, again, to emphasize, as Rafi's made clear, this is often very nuanced. But that's why we have what we call the trusted reporting channel. So when we get information from DICT, from COMELEC, from your good office, from law enforcement and others, they're treated with great deference and treated with great priority. But doxing, putting people's lives in danger, that's obviously a red line for us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, knowing how bureaucratic and to an extent slow the processing of legal actions in the Philippines, we are more concerned on your mandate and mechanisms as Meta, as a multinational technology conglomerate in terms of taking action on these matters, no? From fact-checking and ensuring the veracity of contents and users, taking down posts and banning users that proliferate disinformation and red tagging, up to instituting protections to users so as to allow for a healthy and humane interactions and discourses on your platforms. That is what we're expecting.